these specific gorgonias that we're looking at right now come from like 50 all the way down to like 500 foot. This is Chromanepthia. What's it?
The super popular hot pink one.
Yes, yes. So they're not like your typical Dendronepthia. They almost kind of look like Kenya trees pretty much, in my opinion.
Crew, Evie here, and we are in Florida visiting Levi at Quality Goldfish. How are you today, Levi?
Good, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. You guys probably recognize Levi because he's been recently brought on to start writing articles for us, and he's been actually covering a very interesting side of the hobby that a lot of people don't typically tend to dabble in.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed unique corals, and I dived into like non-photosynthetics kind of like right when I first started off in the hobby. And I just really was super passionate about it, and I wanted to learn more about them and figure out how to keep them in captivity, because at the time when I first started out, they weren't really as common because they were challenging to keep or impossible to keep.
Right, not much knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. Working close with Reef Nutrition to get them the right foods, just caring for them and monitoring their lifespan and such, even kind of going from there.
And you even grow some of the food.
Yes.
Or all of the food.
Yeah, I do a little bit. So I do some rotifers at home. The Swiftia, these gorgonians right here, really tend to enjoy the rotifers. They have larger polyps. They're relatively easy to keep as far as foods because they can grasp some of the larger meaty foods that some people might even feed their fish or their invertebrates. So they can tend to be a little bit easier than some of the other smaller polyp corals in the hobby.
So what else about like tank specifications, lighting requirements, flow rate?
Yeah, so these specific gorgonias that we're looking at right now come from like 50 all the way down to like 500 foot. They run along the eastern seaboard of the United States. They're relatively deep, which means they don't really get much light down there. So you definitely want to kind of take that into consideration when you're placing them in a system. And then you got the Gulf Stream, so you're getting a lot of flow down that deep. So you want to definitely get them on the flow as well to keep them happy.
Tell me about animals or fish that are okay to keep with these guys.
So with these gorgonians specifically, I definitely don't recommend much of any butterflies. Butterflies like to pick at certain polyps, especially the gorgonians. I've always liked to do like Antheus and like basslettes, especially since they're a deeper water tank and I don't run the lights as high at home. So I kind of like to find fish that are in the zones where these are found. Just so I can try to mimic that environment the best that I can for the animals side.
So on water parameters, what do people need to keep in mind when they're looking at alkalinity, calcium, magnesium for the growth on these?
pH is definitely a factor with these, and it's definitely challenging when you have no lights running because you don't have much photosynthesizing in the tank to kind of create that. You definitely got to be careful with the pH. When I'm always running skimmers, I always run the line outside to try to help bring in some more air to the system, as well as aeration on the top of the water. That can help as well. You definitely want to keep your calcium stable as well, because that's actually what they use to grow if you want to keep them healthy long term. Alkalinity, if you're keeping it around the same as you would any other tank, you shouldn't have any issues. And then nitrates and such, I noticed that they don't really react as much to a little higher nitrates in the system as some other corals would. I'm not entirely sure why, but I always like to try to keep the water as clean as possible, especially with how much food you're putting in.
So you're having to feed this every day in a very specific manner.
Yep.
Walk me through what that looks like.
So when I'm feeding the NPS tank specifically, I used to be real keen on target feeding, but I didn't really think that that was doing the coral justice, so I started kind of doing a mixture of foods and broadcast feeding it to the whole tank so they could kind of just feed freely with the flow and such. You're not just like blasting the polyps. So I've had a lot more success since I started doing that than when I was target feeding. I'm not sure exactly why that's a factor, but I've definitely noticed some differences when I broadcast feed.
Okay, so that's good to know. So then what else have we got over here?
So these are a unique carnation coral that was recently brought in. This is Chromanepthia. It's a
The
super
super
unique.
popular hot pink one.
Yes, yes. So super weird. They're definitely a little more like I want to say stiff than a normal carnation would be.
They're kind of like, they're kind of rough
Yeah,
too when you touch them.
Exactly. So they're not like your typical Dendroneptia. They almost kind of look like Kenya trees, pretty much, in my opinion.
But they're not very slimy like
No,
others.
they're not that slimy. They're really solid, but they do expand. They have really small polyps, and keep that in mind when you're feeding them. But some of the colors on them that I've seen come through are amazing. I've seen bright yellows. I've seen some that tend like have tricolored like bodies, like white polyps, like red stalk, and then like a purple base. I mean, there's some really cool colors that have come in. Red and white, that's really cool.
Yeah, the red and white I think is the one I've seen
Yep.
the most frequently.
Yeah, I like to definitely get these quite a bit of current. They tend to open up when you're feeding the tank, but if you get them the right environment where they're kind of hanging off to the side, because that's where they're typically collected. When I talk to the collectors, they're like on like a ledge or like even like dockside, just kind of dangling out into the current. So like I said with the gourds, I try to mimic their environment where they're collected the best that I can to give them the best possibility of survival in the waste aquarium.
Predators. Who do you have to watch for
Predators.
with these guys?
So with these guys, I noticed a lot of snails coming on them. So I had to
Really?
dip them. They were really unique. They actually looked so much like the coral, you could almost barely tell that they were on there. So,
Oh, wow, great. Now we have a
Super
new
weird.
pest to worry
Yes.
about.
so I eradicated them on these specimens, but it was definitely weird. They were very pretty snails, but obviously they were preying on the corals. Larger angelfish, I probably wouldn't put these corals in with big angelfish because they like fleshy corals. So I definitely wouldn't recommend that. Other than that, I don't think you should have much of any issues.
Do you still think butterflies are a little risky for 'em?
Butterflies with these, maybe, but I have a couple butterflies in the tank that I have these in at home, and I have had no issues.
Really?
So-
So what butterflies do you keep at home that you're not having problems with?
Copper band doesn't tend to mess with them. I try to keep it fat and healthy. And then I have a Caribbean long snout butterfly at home too,
Okay.
so it doesn't really touch any of that either.
And then who was the other one that you wanted to show off as well?
Yeah, so-
These are super cool.
Yeah, these are definitely unique. These are out of Australia, the Northern Territory. This one that we're looking at right here in the front, it's like a purplish red.
Yeah, I've seen that one the
body.
most common.
Yep, but
And it's
this
got like
one
the
has-
lighter pink.
This one has like dark purple polyps, so
Oh.
it's kind of different.
That's cool.
And then you have the more common kind of color that we get in is the red stalk with the yellow polyps. We see quite a few of those coming.
These look like they can handle a decent amount of flow.
Yeah, they definitely enjoy the flow.
Okay.
You see it right here. They're
Yeah,
pretty-
they're moving
They're handling
very
the flow
well.
pretty well.
And then what do these guys typically want to feed on?
These are going to feed, they have a little bit larger polyps than the Chromoneptia, so I'm saying like the cyclopods, rotifers, even some phytoplankton as well. If I'm like doing maintenance at home in the tank and stirring up the bottom of stuff, they open wide.
Natural
They
reefs
love-
now?
yeah, exactly.
And then what kind of fish do you really got to watch with this? Because this looks like it gets fuzzy
Yes.
pretty quick.
Yeah, I'd definitely say butterflies and angels for sure. So even with some of the gorgonians that were in my deeper tank of this specific species, I had a rock beauty in there, and the rock beauty definitely enjoyed picking at the gorgonian.
Oh,
So I had
yeah.
to remove him, unfortunately. But ever since that fish has left my aquarium, these are doing much better. I definitely recommend putting these specific species of gorgonian in an area with high flow.
What is growth rate like for this?
Growth rate, they're definitely a little bit slower. I don't know what it would be like in the wild. I hear they're pretty rapid growers in the wild, but I have definitely not noticed near as much growth in my aquariums at home with these compared to the Swiftia that we were talking about originally. So I'm not sure if I have to tweak anything or do anything differently. I've noticed some growth, but not anything significant to where I'd be like super happy with the success in these. But
Where did you decide that you just absolutely had to start trying to keep these?
okay, so I was at a reef show probably 4 years ago now, and I saw the Diodogorgia gorgonians, which are the Caribbean sea fingers, the yellows and the reds. I saw those, and they had a different color that you don't normally see. That really changed my direction, as I noticed some of the deeper corals are kind of more colorful even, especially under the white lighting. So that's kind of where I changed course there. I started pursuing a different little aspect of the hobby, and I kind of went on from there.
And how big is your tank at home that you keep these in?
So with these, my non-photosynthetic tank at home is, I think, 35 gallons approximately. And I just have a lot of gorgonians, a couple of the chrome and FDS, and some sun pools right now. I'd like to get a little bigger tank at some point to put some more non-photosynthetics in, but that just, I got to clear that through the wife first. So
Always ask permission.
yes.
I mean, we give forgiveness later too, but
It was free.
it was free. Yeah, that's always a good way to lead it with. But I'm big. It was free.
Yep.
I can't wait to read and hear all about all the new stuff that you've got coming. So we'll definitely be in touch.
Sounds good.
And we will be back real soon, Reef Builders crew. Until then, we'll see you later.